Monday, March 26, 2018 to order. This time we will take a silent moment of personal reflection. As a reminder, all members of council are obligated to declare a conflict of interest or a pecuniary interest as per section 133 of the Lloydminster Charter regarding any item on this agenda. Councillor Forrest.
Thank you, Your Worship. I am going to declare on 6.5.2 East Grange Channel Rehabilitation Project.
Thank you, Councillor. Moving on to agenda item number 2, additions or deletions to the agenda. Not seeing any, I will move to item number 3 and look for council's direction regarding the approval of this agenda. Councillor Forrest.
I move that the agenda dated March 26, 2018 be approved.
Seconded. Councillor Dietsch. Any further questions or discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to item number 4 on the agenda, which is relates to the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. I'll look to council for direction. Councillor Forrest.
I move that the regular council minutes dated March 12, 2018 be approved.
Seconded. Councillor Monroe. Any questions or comments from the meetings minutes of March 12th? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to agenda item number 5, business arising from the minutes. Business noted. Not seeing any. We'll move on to item number 6, new business department reports and bylaws. 6.1 bylaws. I'll look to the city manager. Please, city clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have 6 bylaws today for various stages of readings. The first bylaw that we'll be looking at is the smoking bylaw. This has been previously seen at the Governance Priority Committee meeting. And the recommendation is that Council grant bylaw 01-2018, the smoking bylaw, the first reading, and instruct administration to hold a Your Voice night on April 19th, 2018, and a public hearing on April 30th, 2018 at 2 p.m. I can report to Council that there was one change to the bylaw to provide clarity that tobacco is permitted on sidewalks and cannabis is not, by changing the definition of a public place and section 4.4.
Thank you, city clerk. Any questions or comments? Councillor Dietsch.
Just a question around, I guess, is there a broader definition of public place as well? I'm thinking of post-secondary institutions like the college. I mean, there's legislation in place out of Saskatchewan that says that public school property is all smoke-free as well. So I would just, and you can't smoke within a certain proximity. Where do places like a college, post-secondary institutions fit in?
We certainly could look at expanding the definition. That's Council's wishes at the second and third readings.
Okay. It's not to ask to include it. I just wonder what where it fits in the definition around that. That's all.
I think that's a good question, Councillor. I think we're going to have a lot of questions around what is legal and what is illegal. And we'll certainly be looking to administration for support on the 19th of April as we get this, our heads wrapped around this completely.
Yeah.
Councillor Forrest.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just had one other question. This round was remove the private dwellings. And it says within definition of public place, the common areas of multi-unit residential facility. I'm just curious, so in a situation where you have someone in an apartment building, you can't do anything about smoke, smell leaving the apartment or anything like that, just so that, would someone be able to do it within an apartment building and it's fine so long as they're doing it within their actual apartment, according to the City of Lloyd's bylaws?
That's correct. As long as they're within their dwelling, they'd be allowed to smoke or smoke cannabis if that was the case, depending on what the lease regulations were. In a hallway is considered a public area, and that's in accordance with provincial legislation as well. So we're just mirroring that as well.
Sorry. And that's for, and we consider the tobacco smoke and cannabis smoke to be equivalent within the bylaw as far as perfect.
That's correct.
City Clerk, I'd like to pose a question. I know there was a recent ruling in Saskatchewan regarding where it was challenged about smoking in a common residence, such as an apartment or condo. Are you familiar with that ruling?
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, I'll bring it, I'll try and gather some more information because there was a case that I believe it went to the appeal court and they wanted, so it's something we'll have to look at.
My experience in BC on the condo side of things is that the condo board themselves, the strata, can have a bylaw within their bylaws as far as smoking within the building itself, so that you can't grow or smoke within that building. So I'm assuming that would be the same type of thing here. If somebody owns a condo and they want to change, put in their rules and regulations that you cannot smoke or grow cannabis in there.
That's correct. That's not within the city's purview to
For sure.
regulate within a private
That's right.
property. The leasing or the condo
Yep.
board would have that ability.
Councilman Rowe?
Is that documented somewhere that we have the equivalent to marijuana or tobacco, that they are both considered?
The
Smoking?
smoke,
Yeah, is that,
it's just within the smoke or the, it's just.
do we have to, but do we have to have it written out that it's equivalent? Or it's just assumed?
It's silent on that because it is assumed we wouldn't consider it a nuisance,
Okay.
which we believe that probably will end up facing, but most people haven't had a good way to figure out how to drug alcohol, and they do participate in cannabis. This now will move forward, but they're technically within their property.
Great. Okay.
I'm good.
Good. Any other comments, questions? Councilor Baker?
Just refresh my mind, if you would, please. Public property, school divisions, public parks, anything owned by the city, what else would be classed as public? Church sites? I'm just not sure of the definition.
It's a
of
place.
public-
It's a place where the public can gather.
Pardon?
A place where the public can gather. So mostly in this case,
Okay.
the sort of sports center, those areas.
It covers just about everything.
Pretty well.
Okay.
Any other questions this time? Certainly, I think that the opportunity, as the motion indicates, that we will be having your voice night, where I'm sure we'll hear from the residents of the community that have many different questions. I look to council for direction on bylaw 01-2018, smoking bylaw. Councilman Rowe.
That council grant bylaw 01-2018, the smoking bylaw first reading, and instruct administration to hold the Your Voice Night on April 19th, 2018, and a public hearing on April 30th, 2018 at 2 p.m.
Seconder? Councilor Diachak. Any further discussion, questions? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to 6.1.2, I'll get down to the city clerk, the city manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. 6.1.2 is the first reading to the Community Standards Bylaw 10-2018, and the recommendation is that Council grant Bylaw 10-2018, the Community Standards Bylaw, the first reading, and instruct administration holding Your Voice Night on April 19th, 2018, and a public hearing on April 30th, 2018 at 2 p.m. I can report to Council that the bylaw has changed slightly. Section 9.1 was changed to clearing the sidewalks in 72 hours instead of the 48 that was initially proposed. The numbering schedule on B was fixed to align better with the bylaw, and section 18 obstruction was fixed.
Thank you, city clerk. Comments or questions, council? Catch up 18, okay.
I just want to comment that it will be interesting, obviously, to have the Your Voice Night and the public input on some of these bylaws. So,
Absolutely.
are they finalized?
Councilor Fennell.
I'd just like to comment just on the noise section of that bylaw. I think I receive a lot of complaints on noise within the city. Especially I've asked the administration to take a look at suppression for whistles from trains. And they're going to be looking at that. I think that that's a long process and a long way to hoe. But you're going to be working with both railroad companies, and it is possible there's many municipalities that have that. To further on that, I know that in some municipalities they have their noise laws actually have decibels, certain allowable decibels, and I would try and I'd like to encourage council to take a look at that. And, I was just looking at Epton's, for example. They've got a bylaw specifically for motorcycles, and the time of day, and there's a lot more details. So, and we take a look at as far as measurements go. There's all kinds of sound meters that are out there. So these are actual factual ways of measuring sound. I remember watching local news a few years ago where the city police had set up a stand for motorcycles that were with loud motorcycles, so they were actually testing it right on site, and so they have a definite. So I do get lots of complaints, like I say, on the noise side of things, and it's just something to consider, perhaps a little bit more detail on the noise bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor. And that's certainly something that we can direct administration to look at further, for sure. That's the way the direction council feels that certainly it is something that trains are one thing, but certainly both motorcycles and other devices, including vehicles, sometimes get people's dander up just a little bit. Any further questions? If not, I'll look for direction from council on 6.1.2.
Actually, I do have one other question. Sorry, just to be sure, on the 72 hours versus 48 hours, we went back to 72. So initially, when you brought it to us at GPC, it was brought down to 48 hours, and now we're going back to 72, just to be clear.
You're correct, Councillor.
Perfect. Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Thanks.
That council grant bylaw 10-2018, the community standards bylaw, first reading, and instruct administration to hold a Your Voice Night on April 19th, 2018, and a public hearing on April 30th, 2018 at 2 p.m.
Second. Councillor Craig. Any further discussion or comments before I call for the question? Not seeing any. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to the agenda is 6.1.3. Please, Superintendent.
Thank you, Your Worship. 6.1.3 is the business license bylaw 11-2018, and the recommendation is the council grant bylaw 11-2018, business license bylaw, first reading, and instruct administration to hold Your Voice Night on April 19th, 2018, and a public hearing on April 30th, 2018 at 2 p.m. The only change to the bylaw has been a correction in spelling, and other than that it stands as presented.
Council have any questions or comments? Councillor Torson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Although I think, although Councillor Fagin wasn't with us that day, but at the same time, I think I made a lot of what I really believed as far as business license fees pretty clear at our last GPC. So I'm just wondering, are we waiting for more information on business license fees, or would now be an appropriate time to propose moving them, or should we ask for feedback from residents, specifically our business license fees? Do you think they're in line with the amounts of additional, at least capital costs that come with cannabis legalization?
I'll take the first kick at that, Councillor. I think that based on what was brought down last week in the government of Alberta's budget, and the indication there is no support for municipalities at this time to implement the cannabis regulations at our level, including namely the cost of policing at this time, that certainly I would support before we go to the second reading, or at second reading we could see what people have to say in the community, but I would certainly support taking another look at it. I think that we might as well get it in the community, get people talking about it, because we still have one more budget to go. That is on April 10th, and that will let us know what the Saskatchewan stands. from that perspective. And I think that with both of those in hand, we'll have a much better argument with people to help them understand why we need to do what we may have to do to fund this program. Councillor?
I first have a question, but I also have a comment. My best guess, which is me crystal balling it, is that the provincial government's not going to do any form of revenue sharing as far as cannabis retail. Same as all the other provincial governments have basically said that they weren't going to share much of that. So as a municipality, we have to bear all the costs related to this, but we get none of the revenue. So especially on the capital cost side of things, to actually purchase goods to be able to police this thing, I think it's totally appropriate that we amend our business license fees to get some level of cost recovery on the additional fees rather than the general public having to pay for it, because there's one small group that's going to benefit almost independently because of it. But my question is, do we have a pretty good idea of what those capital costs look like at this time?
I'll let the city clerk.
We have looked at some of the capital costs, and we have provided some of those numbers forward. Our estimate, and that's the worst case scenario, would be an additional $350,000 to $375,000.
That's on operating?
That's correct.
So what's the additional capital cost? Because operating to me is a little bit different, and when Councillor Diachuk and I had a little back and forth on this before the meeting, just generally, not a debate, no decisions were made, don't worry anyone. But he was saying that, maybe I'll let him say it. What were you saying, Councillor Diachuk?
Oh, geez. Well, I think what most organizations stumble into when they begin to look at change is that they assume it's going to be a total add-on to the organization and what we do, and forget to look at what we're going to stop doing. And so I guess if we're building a business case around this, my question would be is, what are our costs currently in terms of dealing with possession of marijuana, the charges, the time in courts, and all those costs? Because in theory, once we legalize it, those costs won't be there anymore. And so that's a piece, I guess, looking at it. In fairness, if you're going to do a budget, you need to look on both sides of it. Secondarily, I think your comment is almost completely accurate, Councillor Orzan. Provincial governments have said they're not giving any this year because, frankly, they're not clear on how much money they're going to get. And so, that's dependent on whether you legalize it on July 1st, which is now moved to another day where we have no clarity on at this point in time. So I think a little bit of caution needs to be exercised because we're going to create a budget and a tax for perhaps 5 or 6 months of the year tops. And so the danger of doing that, I guess, is one, you give a tax and then all of a sudden you're going to raise it again. I'd rather, we work our way through it and address the things we're going to stop doing, and I respect the number that's been given here by the clerk. And then when we're ready for January to be able to say, based on 6 months of operation, this is a realistic amount, and we shoot for that amount. Because the other part is after 6 months, the provincial government will be in a better spot to say, yes, this is what we can extrapolate, and perhaps here's an amount you're going to get. They've already committed to some other pieces, certainly, that I've heard. But again, what does it mean for us here locally? I have no clue. So that's just, in my mind, I guess, trying to get it right, and it's going to be a challenge for us.
Councillor Torres.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I appreciate those comments. We're still crystal balling what the provincial governments are going to give us, and we really have no idea at this point. I believe it's improbable to get much, but either way, I was asking actually to our city clerk about the capital costs, because I believe you had a different number for capital costs. It's not nearly as significant. So just to buy new equipment for testing.
And of course, this is sort of a guess because we don't know what the actual cost of the equipment will be or what the equipment will be settled on, because the screening devices, once they're approved, so we're figuring about $25,000 capital cost for the purchase of those.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think we're way too far ahead on this thing. Working on it and getting it massaged is one thing, but going forward with this right now, I don't think it's right. This is a federal government program. You could probably ask those provinces what their deal is, and they probably can't tell you. That's typical of how it works. And this will, in my mind, be a download on our municipalities. The capital cost will include some kind of mechanism for measuring the tolerance of cannabis in your system, or blood testing, or whatever it is. I don't know what it is. Today, someone, thank you, Jonathan, for sending that article out of Regina. They modeled their costs based on the Edmonton model. And they're talking, I think if I read it quickly, at about 11:45 today, it was about 1.2 to 1.8 billion to do Regina. So say ours is 25% of that. Figure it out. Machines in there were listed from, I think, $25,000 to $50,000 for a testing machine. But we don't know that. And then we got to pay the police on top of that. I mean, it could cost us $500,000. Just having the less few people doesn't necessarily reduce the cost the same way. So we're going to have to invest in policing and equipment and time and maybe extra officers for all I know. I wouldn't get excited about roaring through with this because the Prime Minister thinks it's something we should do on July 1st. It's, I don't think we have enough information. Thank you.
Councillor Miller, Councillor Thorson.
So the equipment we have to pay for, whether we have to pay for the extra training that the RCMP are going to have to receive in order to
That's
be able to
correct.
implement the...
And we've identified that cost as well. We've identified general staff training around $5,000.
Right. And I think for Council Baker, although we don't have a definitive date, it is something that we do have to at least address and get ahead of. I don't think we can wait too long before we know what implications it's going to have on our city.
If I may, Your Worship, if you're going to play in the game, you should know what the rules are. Does anybody know the rules? I read stuff from all over, from Colorado to Ottawa to Edmonton, and you tell me what the rules are. List them up on that board and say, these are the rules, and this is what we got to play by. Can somebody do that?
We're getting close, Councillor, if I can take a
Well,
step.
we might be close, but I haven't seen it.
No, and until it is federal law, the problem we've got is that that's even a moving target, as you've indicated. We know that the original headline or target was in early July. Now the latest, I believe, I can safely say, is sometime in September, give or take, when the Senate gets done with it. And I think for now, there's two, I guess, major issue that we're dealing with is we take the first reading of this bylaw, and we've got the ability to determine the second and third reading. And I think the second, to Councillor Thorson's point, being where are we at from a business license perspective to deal with the costing. And I think both of them are these are all valid points. And I think that the question really lies is we're going to end up having businesses that are open for a very short time in 2018 and moving into a full-fledged 2019 if they're open in 2018. So I think that there's hopefully some ability for us to move on that business license. And the question I had, and at least it'll lead into my question, but I'll catch Councillor Thorson first before I ask that question to follow order. The bottom line is I think we've got to move this slowly but steadily, but I think the questions are very good because at the end of the day, who's paying for that? And, the indication I received through AUMA and Suma's discussions with lobbying both provinces was they were trying to cost share some of that money. But as you said, Councillor Baker, we know sometimes that's a challenge with our provincial governments. And as I say, I'm holding out to see what Saskatchewan says before I throw them under the bus. But we know Alberta has pretty much indicated there's no money for 2 years. And I'm going, wow, that's incredible. Based on a 75% split of whatever they sell is what the province does get. But that's a choice they've made. And we'll continue to lobby that accordingly through our MLA as well as through an AUMA. But I think we've identified two very good challenges. But at the same time, we've got to try and move this forward just a little bit to keep this going. And hopefully we'll have more answers for people on the 19th as an example. I think Councillor Thorson, you had a comment.
Thank you, Your Worship. Although I'd like administration to confirm my numbers, I did a little of my research, just looked at Vancouver and Victoria because they have business licenses for medical marijuana retailers. And the city of Victoria has a $5,000 business license for marijuana or medical marijuana retailers, whereas their regular business license is only about $500. The city of Vancouver is a $30,000 business license, and their regular business license is very prescriptive as to what your business is, so it ranges all over the place depending on what you're doing. The other thing I saw was that to actually apply for permits for zoning changes in both of these municipalities, in Vancouver, ranges from $718 to $5,100. And that's just for medical marijuana, depending on how much work it actually takes for them to get the zoning right. And then for Victoria is a flat $7,500 charge for a permit to get the zoning changed for marijuana retailing. So just so everyone understands, the places that are doing this already, they understand the costs that come with it. They are trying to recoup them in some way, and it's the standard that probably everyone's going to be looking at. And even I read some articles that the city of Edmonton is going to follow a model similar to that, depending on what sharing is going to be coming, and we've seen nothing's coming, so that's the model they're going to be following as well. And I'm assuming that's going to be the standard.
So those medical marijuana dispensaries, how do they compare to the two categories that we have? You know, small distribution and larger distribution.
Yeah.
Is there any more information on that?
There really isn't. Actually, the ranges in the pricing for the zoning bylaw changes are like for the zoning amendments. Those ones are where the $718 to $5,100 where that came into play. But I couldn't tell you on specifically on the size of the facility whether that's different, because I don't think that they differentiate. I think it's $30,000 either way.
Yeah, because there would be no other license for anything else other than medical marijuana at this point. And I guess I'm thinking, my understanding of reading is that those tend to be the larger facilities as well. And they tend to be, again, it's almost like warehouse style where the prescription comes in, it's filled, it goes out the door. So I think it's significantly different than what we would see in terms of the presentation we had. The square footage under 2,000, over 2,000, whatever those meters or square feet they were. So that's the danger of making the comparison, but I don't dispute the fact that the differentiating price is the place that we should look at. I think the bottom line is that in the end, even if there were 10 businesses and we charged them 10,000, we're still not going to recoup our costs. And so the danger of this is, do you make the tax so high that you only based on the assumption of the amount you need, I guess, and I don't know that we do other businesses at this point. So,
Councilor Sorensen.
That's why I believe it's only fair to go with some of the costs we have a little bit better idea of, which would be the capital costs associated with the machines and things like that, because I think that there's a little more information out there on that stuff. And the question is, even if you do recover a little bit extra, is it not fair that there's going to be some marginal operating costs that may have increased that we can't exactly pin down at this time, but in the end it's going to come out in the wash, and it's still better than your average taxpayer paying for a service that has additional costs within the community that they shouldn't have to pay for, especially if they're not in favor of it existing in the first place.
So just one follow-up, if I could, is our taxes for, let's say, a place that has a bar attached to a hotel, their taxes, are they higher than just a regular hotel? Because if you drink at the bar, potentially you're creating more cost for RCMP, so there's no difference at this point?
I'm getting the no from Scott, so no, I think it's based on commercial footage and property.
So if there is a cost, then I would suggest that same logic be applied to all the other establishments we have. And that's the danger of going down that pathway. And maybe it's the right way to go. Because if we're looking at what the true costs are, then we should be looking at it in a broader sense and have a look at that.
Councilor Sorensen.
Totally understand what you're saying. Purely on the capital cost. If I were a councillor and there was prohibition going on and it was ending tomorrow and there was additional costs for RCMP, I would have the same logic. But the cat's already out of the bag on that one. We have no ability to control that. But on the capital side, we have the ability to do something.
Councilor Baker.
Just to end this,
I thought the same thing was getting
let's put it to you this way. How many breathalyzer machines do you want on the street? 25 or 2? How many cannabis machines do you want on the street? 1 or 40? So how are you going to put a price on it? We don't even know what we're doing here.
Yeah.
I'm either totally lost this whole conversation, but I have no idea what the law is going to be, and I don't really believe anybody else does. That's the first time I heard today that we probably won't get any money from the province. Now, if this costs, if Regina's 1.2 to 1.8 million, we're 32,000 and they're 110,000. So we're about a third of the population, give or take.
210, Councillor, I believe.
Or 210.
Yeah,
So if the work off of 280, it's a better number, or 180. But in any case, it could cost us $200,000-300,000. And we recover $50,000 in licenses. Where's the other $150,000 going to come from? Are you going to, just like we said earlier, pack it on the back of the property owners? Is this where we're headed, or?
Well,
And if I just, and I know we should get through this first reading because I think this is really good stuff that really should be plowed through, if you like, at those meetings as well. But I think if we look at some of the comments that I heard from folks in Colorado is that their number one costs still continue to be alcohol misuse and abuse. That tended to be the drivers in their community. And so, the skies are falling, and I don't want to make this out to be the big boogeyman, and we need to be aware of it and be aware of the potential costs, the challenges, and be ready for it. But at times, I think we talk about it like it's the biggest problem and give it 90% of our time on it. And what I'm hearing from Colorado is that alcohol continues to be 90% of the problem in their communities. So it's important to keep in perspective that it is an issue and we need to deal with it, but it's not going to be the biggest issue we have. That's all.
thank you,
That's a
Councillor.
good point.
You're absolutely right, Councillor Banchak, that there's more to be discussed about this, and certainly you've raised an issue that is got a lot of implications to our community. Councillor Baker Douglas, I think, have all the answers by any means to answer your question, because the rules will continue to evolve. I had one question, if I can, to place the city clerk and may direct it on. Can we, or do we have the authority in the bylaw to prorate a business license if a business comes into place September 1st of the year? What will they be paying for a business license? Is that, have we looked at that? And how do we treat other businesses? And I guess there's sort of two questions there, because if a business was to start on June 1st, we charge them a full year's business license as we charge any other business. And second, is there a prorating? When does a prorating happen?
And I don't want to put Scott on the spot here, but I believe we do not prorate business licenses for the June dates.
No, it's after a certain point of the year, we don't charge them the full rate. We charge them half a year. I don't know what dates are exactly right now.
I think Councilor Torres is
That's
trying
right.
his homework here.
No, it's in the bylaw. Just after out-of-town businesses, I think it's got a rule that I believe applies to all.
Do you have a section number?
Page 54. And it says, any new license issued after the first day of July in the current year will be required to pay 1/2 of the annual fee as set forth in Schedule B, with the exception of any temporary license, or any fee based on a daily rate, or any fee based on a per vehicle rate.
Okay, so that answers the question. Thank you. Because I'm sure that wouldn't come up from that perspective, because until the cannabis is legalized, we cannot issue a business license, and that business license will be effective once the federal law is in effect in this country. So that'll answer some of the questions around that. Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Scott. Any further comments, Councilor?
Do casino licenses fall within this purview? Of this bylaw?
I'll let the city manager go to the city clerk, possibly.
Because I think we're getting a casino. I don't know if you guys know that, but
I'd have to do a little research to make sure.
but it might be one of those things that we'll wait to the second reading just so we address it.
Yeah, for sure.
And I guess where I'm going with this is that
today, but certainly.
following, some of the dialogue here and discussion is that if we're looking at businesses that actually cost us money in terms of adding services and supports, and we know that some of the characters that come with casinos, not just the seniors and everybody else that comes in to gamble appropriately, the people on periphery often cost us money in terms of crime prevention and other pieces that come with it. So what latitude do we have around those pieces?
That's a very good question.
Sorry, to answer the question, it would be treated just like any other business. A casino would be treated like any other business in the current region as well.
Okay.
If I could ask.
But we don't have, so it wouldn't show up as a separate item, casino with this much. Okay.
If I can ask the administration to go away before the second reading determine, are we on the line too for business licensing for casinos? There's 5 or 7 of them in Saskatchewan and several in Alberta, just to get an idea, because I think this is a good discussion that if we're really going to get to the heart of the matter of what it costs to do business, then this is a cost that the city incurs, and that's the taxpayers. Councillor Baker is very clear on that. If they don't pay for it, it's going to be on the back of the taxpayers. So let's make sure we can answer that question. Councillor Carson.
Thank you, Your Worship. As I was looking at other communities' business license fees, I saw every single one that I looked at did have a separate one for casino. Victoria, Vancouver, Edmonton, Regina. Just saying.
Excellent. Thank
What about
you.
cities of our size?
I couldn't find any that had their business licenses in order to deal with any of this stuff, so.
All right.
Okay.
So I'm still going to look for direction on 6.1.3, Councillor Monroe.
The Council Grant Bylaw 11-2018, the business license bylaw, first reading and instruct administration to hold a Your Voice Night on April 19th, 2018, and a public hearing on April 30th, 2018 at 2 p.m.
Second, Councillor Batchel. Any further questions or comments? I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to 6.1.4, City Manager, City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. 6.1.4 is bylaw 09-2018, the traffic bylaw, and the recommendations that Council grant bylaw 09-2018, the traffic bylaw, the first reading, and instruct administration to hold Your Voice Night on April 19th, 2018, and a public hearing on April 30th, 2018 at 2 p.m. I can report that there has been some changes to the bylaw. Specifically, Council brought forward a concern about hydrants, and that fine has been increased from 50 to 150. The fine for parking on the sidewalk was increased to 100, and the permitted time for a trailer park to be parked on a roadway was increased from 48 hours to 72.
Thank you. City Clerk. Any further comments or questions?
Thank you for making those amendments. I think we had some really great discussion last week in terms of the bylaws, so I'm interested, again, just to see what the public has to say about them.
One other question is that we use the mailbox systems, those super boxes. Are there any restrictions on parking in front of those? And there's 2 parts to that. One is that when I go to get my mail, it's often you'll have to park way down the road. And the other part is when the people go to bring the mail, and they will do a double park right alongside the vehicle if it's parked in front of the mailbox. So is that something that's come up as an issue at all, or because I don't see any no parking signs in front of the super boxes, and yet I know from their own safety they have to get out of the vehicle, they put the lights on, and they.
Currently, the bylaw would make double parking illegal,
But that
we can certainly look at an exclusion zone in front of the community.
I don't know if others do that or not, but it just seems for those guys that have to drop the mail off, it'd certainly be safer for them.
Absolutely. It's simply just even a meter on each side of the mailbox to give most delivery vehicles delivery mail, I think, adequate space to obtain that.
But then, is that going a little bit, what about your mail carriers that deliver things to your house that are coming via vehicle?
But no super box there, right?
No, but there's still the potential, I don't know. Are we
But
getting,
they
is
would
that?
no, I'm just thinking they would look for a regular parking spot and carry on. It's just that with those guys, they'll have to deliver, I don't know how many boxes are there, a dozen each, you have 24.
20, it would be 27, no, more than 27, I think, about 36.
So I mean, they're bringing out those big bins of, so they can't physically, I think it would be inappropriate for them to carry, particularly when they're doing on minus 36 or whatever is out there, but it's just a question.
So
I mean,
this-
those that do house to house will park and they can,
So are you just suggesting there's a specific allotment just for them, only they can park there and nobody else?
yeah, just for the,
Okay, so what if, so you're saying that they're not there, but the snow is really deep, you're gonna go pick up your mail, you can't park in that spot?
sorry.
I don't know, I just feel like I understand, but at the same time, for a mom with her kids that's getting her mail, I don't want her to have to park like a little bit away, she can park right in front of that box for the 2 seconds she's gonna get her mail.
So
Or it could be 15-minute parking.
So,
Right, maybe that's the thing, is that it's a 15-minute parking.
So council, if we can ask administration to do a little research on that and come back to that second reading and to comment on that, because I'm sure this isn't the only community that's got this issue and thought about this as we move forward. Okay, any other questions or comments? Councilor Thorson?
I just have one other question, and that's as far as weights. So, and this is on the, again, on the policing side of things, but would you have to go out to a scale with someone to see if they were over 7,500 kilograms? To actually police that? Because it says on truck routes, the operator of any vehicle and trailer with a combination over 7,500 kilograms maximum gross weight should be using the truck route. How do you know that?
So if there's a suspicion by the officer, yes, he could order him to the scale to have him weighed, or if we have a concern that something's occurring on a regular basis, we could work with Department of Transport on the side of the border to have them come into the community and provide us assistance.
Perfect. Thank you.
Again, any other questions? Council for direction on 6.1.14. Council Monroe.
The council grant bylaw 09-2018, traffic bylaw, first reading, and instruct administration to hold a Your Voice Night on April 19th, 2018, and a public hearing on April 30th, 2018, 2 p.m.
Seconder, Council Badger. Any further questions or comments? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to 6.1.5. City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Bylaw 6.1.5 is bylaw 052018, Southgate Plaza redistricting, and the recommendation is that council grant first reading to bylaw 052018, being a bylaw to redistrict lot 37, plan 5368 NY within the northeast border, section 36, 49, range 1, west of the 4th meridian, from DC2 Direct Control District to C2 Highway Corridor Commercial District, and the council hold a public hearing on April 16th, 2018 at 2 p.m. This bylaw, this item has come forward to the GPC, and it is unchanged from its previous recommendations.
Thank you, City Clerk. Any questions or comments?
Make a motion.
Council Monroe.
That council grant first reading to bylaw 05-2018, being a bylaw to redistrict lot 37, plan 5368NY within the northeast quarter section, 36 township, 49 range 01, west of the 4th meridian from DC2 direct control district to C2 highway corridor commercial district, and that council hold a public hearing on April 16th, 2018 at 2 p.m.
Seconder, Council Badger. Any further discussion or comments? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to bylaw 6.1.6, or item 6.1.6, the clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is bylaw 08-218, emergency management bylaw, and the recommendations of council grant its second and third readings. This bylaw has undergone a slight change since council had an opportunity to view it before, and the changes to section 7.5 providing more clarity on the determination of a local state of emergency by the mayor, city manager, or their designee.
Thank you, City Clerk. Any questions or comments from council regarding this bylaw? Council Thorson.
Did we have a public hearing on this one already? Or did we not need?
There is no public hearing required for this one.
Okay, perfect.
So just for clarification, there has to be 2 people, right, that sign off on the declaration? Okay.
That's correct.
Council Dutch.
I'll move that council grant bylaw 08-2018, emergency management bylaw, second reading.
Seconder, Council Monroe. Any further questions or comments before I call for the question? Not seeing any, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Council
Move the council grant bylaw 08-2018, emergency management bylaw, third reading.
Seconder, Councilor Thorson. Before I call for the question, is there any further questions? Not seeing any, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to the agenda, 6.2, City Manager's Office. I don't see any numbers. Yeah, you're good. Excellent. Moving back to the Office of the Clerk for 6.3. to the city clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. The item we have before us is the Trans-Canada Yellowhead Association and our membership in it. And the recommendation is that council approve membership in the Trans-Canada Yellowhead Association. The background is the Trans-Canada Yellowhead Highway Association is a non-profit association established in 1947 to promote the development, maintenance, and use of the Yellowhead Corridor. On March 12, 2018, the Governance and Priority Committee recommended that the request come to council for decision. At the March 12th GPC meeting, the committee recognized an opportunity to provide leadership to the association while membership does have potential risks and benefits. The options that council currently has today is the council approve membership to the Trans-Canada Yellowhead Association. This will allow administration to inform the association that the city wishes to renew. The city may have to appoint a member of the administration service director of the association, in addition to Councillor Buckingham, and the other options, the council not approve the membership in the Trans-Canada Yellowhead Association. This will allow administration to inform the association it will not renew its membership. There is a budget implication of approximately $5,276 for membership fees as well as associated travel costs.
Thank you, City Clerk. Any comments or questions on this matter? Councilor Sorsa.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think there's another cost that we really haven't, we really can't put our finger on or thumb on, is how much effort this thing is going to require to kind of revive and keep going if we stay with it. And I think that's the real big picture cost that I don't know whether it's worth it or not. From what I saw from strategic planning documents that were kind of thrown around, I just don't know that the value is there. I think the writing's on the wall. This organization itself does not have a long future ahead of it, and I don't see the point of wasting or spending taxpayers' money on it when I don't believe this organization is going to exist 3-4 years from now. And it's going to take a significant amount of effort from our community or some of our councillors to try and keep it going, and I think that effort could be spent on different economic development plans. Thank you.
Councilor Dodger.
Yeah, I would concur, and I think in part after hearing sort of the background on the organization and seeing the exodus of some of the bigger players in it, if we want to be involved in it, then I think we really have to commit as a lead player in revitalizing it. Otherwise, I don't see the merits in us engaging it. If we're just going to buy a ticket for the ride, there are a lot of other rides around we can buy a ticket on, and I think the perception I've had, based on what we've talked about, is that really, without the large organizations, the ride is coming to a stop, and you bought a ticket to nowhere kind of thing, right? So at this point, I would recommend that not renewing and looking at it again in a year if there's an opportunity. And if the organization, in fact, has grown and someone's breathed some new life into it, and there's potential, perhaps, I honestly think right now that we have enough priorities internally that we need to address and invest our time and energy from both City Council and staff. Quite often, we rely upon staff to give us information as to what we bring to the Yellowhead Association or any other meeting. And frankly, if there isn't enough merit, then I don't want to waste, these folks' time and our time when we can redirect it internally to some of the priorities we have. We have wastewater treatment, we have Highway 17 joining, we have DARC, there's the whole long list that I think focusing inward at this point in time, certainly for this year and maybe a bit more, I would rank as a higher priority.
Any further comments? Councilor Baker.
Well, Your Worship, I'm just on the other side of the fence on this one. This organization started in 1992, and for those that lived in this community for the last 25 years, and if they understand what's happened to the Yellowhead right across the country in the last 25 years, it's pretty amazing. Just drive to Saskatoon to a hockey game tonight. It's 4-lane now. It didn't used to be 4-lane. And on the list goes. And we had two good representatives that I'm aware of. I'm not saying there wasn't more over the last 25 years that worked for our community. And one was Mr. Cease McKay, who ran Kinsley and owned Kinsley Transfer, and was a city alderman. And then Alderman Gayford, who was in the trucking business, and he worked very hard at it. And I know he did, at trying to keep that organization going. And sometimes, when you make a few gains, say, well, I'm going to take my ball back and go home. Or things take a little bit, well, maybe we should get out of it. It's not doing much. Maybe we got to do something and take a lead role and help get the thing back on track. I think it's very vital because there's many, many issues on the Yellowhead yet. And just because it's not in our backyard, doesn't mean that our truckers don't run right across Western Canada. I know we used to have a company in town called Nelson Homes. They ran from Thunder Bay to Prince Rupert on a regular basis, hauling homes across the country. And there may be, I'm sure there's lots of businesses doing that. And we talk about being a hub for economic development. When you look at a map, we're right in the middle of the country. We got highways going east-west, we got highways going north-south. I was at a meeting as late as last week, talking about another entrance on the east side of Alberta into the United States. That was on the agenda. And that eastern corridor of the United States, or pardon me, of Canada, are running down past Suffield, on the east side of Suffield Range. And how many miles it will save the truckers, what it could do for the whole eastern part of the province. And for $5,000, we spend $5,000 on stuff that delivers nothing in this city. And we all know it. But it's political right to do it. Well, in my mind, we're working for the good of the whole organization, and I think we should really consider staying in. And I suggested it a week ago that if you thought it was worthwhile, we could ask Mr. McKay to come in and speak to us. He still lives in the city, and give you his perspective on it. But you know, people don't always have time to do everything they're asked to do when they go on city council. Because some of these jobs, you gotta leave town in the middle of the week. People got jobs, and we have to really consider that. And if we spend some of our economic development time on Yellowhead, tell me what we've been doing the last 3 years. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Certainly, I'd like to chime in a little bit. I appreciate Councillor Buckingham was not able to be here for today's meeting. Him and I chatted quite extensively, because a year ago, when we got elected, I asked Councillor Buckingham if he'd be willing to sit on that committee. He did, and we went to the annual general meeting a year ago this April. He volunteered to come on the board of directors. In this past year, he's shared his frustrations with me due to the organization that he has grown over time, but has reached a point, and certainly there's been a lot of loss of membership in Edmonton and Saskatoon being two major cities on the route. We've been notified of additional communities and rural municipalities that are affected directly by the Yellowhead that have stepped away. Challenges that they have currently is the membership is shrinking, and after it was identified a year ago, there's been no efforts made. The strategic plan left a lot to be desired, and very concerning actually, because I think that our council's gone through strategic planning. I felt very comfortable. I looked at their document and I was lost. I was completely lost as to what direction and where they really want to go. They're tied to a long-term, a lease that will expire in another year, $30,000 rent for an office that maintains one individual in Sherwood Park, or actually in Edmonton, the city of Edmonton. I'm really challenged by supporting it because I think that it needs some new direction. I think there's an opportunity, but sometimes things have to come to an end and be reborn to see the true need, as well as to experience and set that direction. I'll go on record saying I did talk to the mayor of the county of Strathcona last year to talk about seeing if we could eliminate that lease. But due to the nature of that lease, it wasn't going to be able to be broken, and they had to pay out $30,000. I asked the mayor if the county would consider taking that office, and she said she'd have to run it by council. I said I would do the same if the opportunity arose to house it. Then the executive director is a part-time position. I don't think that position would travel from Edmonton to here. So the organization, I think, is at a point that it needs an absolute serious infusion, and we're going to be a full year before that infusion because nothing's going to change for one more year. And I would really like to see us come back in a year and take a look and see what's left and go from there. And maybe it's the way we send the message, because the challenge is it's reached a point from what I've seen, and that's what I believe Councillor Buckingham shared with me, is he cannot see the value. I can't disagree with the points you made, Councillor Baker, for sure that it's done a lot of good work, and there's always going to be a need for lobby, but I think it may have to come to an end, in my thoughts, before we can start again and do it, to where it needs to go. I think there's an interest, there's no question, but we need to show value, and somebody's gonna have to take the initiative, and that'd be the executive director and the board of directors that are fully supportive of that individual, and that's not happening today, and the organization is floundering pretty hard. There's some initiatives being taken to try and get membership up, but they were dipped into the reserves to operate this year, and they will basically run out of money next year, no matter what, unless they can get just an incredible intake of new memberships. And I think that we would chase it if we continued on this route for 1 year, whereas I think in a year or two, we may need to have it come back to this council and other councils and say, hey, this is valuable. And you're absolutely right, we're in the dead center, and that's why we looked at that perspective. But we couldn't change it today. And this, I don't know if it'll even make a year. That's my concern as well. That's my perspective. Councilor Torres, I believe you got a comment now with the councilor.
I'll let you go.
Okay,
Oh, you're
Councilor
so
Rowe.
kind. Thank you. I guess for me, the main reasoning behind this yellowhead is to, eventually their goal would be to be able to go across Canada and just go. For me, I'm not sure that I want anyone to be bypassing our community. I think going through Lloydminster is great for our economic development. It's halfway between Edmonton and halfway between Saskatoon. People want to stop here, whether it's to get gas or snacks or eat at our restaurants. And having them divert off of that main Highway 16, I think they might still pull in, but at the same time, it is going to lose some part of our economy. So for me, I don't see in the near future us wanting to do that. So at this time, I'm not sure it's valuable enough for us to continue to be part of this. Unless, like Gerald said, it does revitalize and there are some benefits that would become directly to our community. I understand the regionalization and we need to work as a region, but at this time I don't honestly see any aspects of this board that are directly impactful to our community, and how can we ask our taxpayers to pay for something that's not going to benefit our community at this point?
Councilor Torres.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with what Stephanie was saying there, especially when we talk about as a region. I think that when we look at the money we're spending here, I think we could get some numbers back from administration to take a look at joining some of the regional economic development associations, RETAs, or the ones out of Saskatchewan. And I think that our energies and our funds would be better suited to bring investment to our region than this particular organization, as well as, you know, all the information as far as the writing being on the wall for this one. But it might be the end either way.
Councilor Chuck.
I feel that I honestly don't have enough information to make a decision today. And a couple of things. One is that when I look at the amount of $6,000, whatever it is, if we buy an ad in the paper and run it twice or in a magazine, our cost is probably going to beat that more. And so if we look at a membership cost, what advertising does it give us? Even if we just put it in that category to look at it. The challenge for me, I guess, is that in having conversations with Councillor Buckingham is that because of his proximity to dealing with it, is his perception is that, you know what, it's not going anywhere, and I appreciate it. I don't know any more than what he's shared with me. I recognize where our position is. I recognize that organizations like this play a role in terms of promoting the communities and the issues that are that go along with the communities, particularly on this highway, the Yellowhead in this instance. And so I can see the merit on both sides of it. What I struggle with, I guess, is that if Councillor Buckingham is the person that we have sitting on the committee, and he personally sees that there isn't any merit, and I feel badly that he's not here, I wish he was here, it's difficult to sit here and make a decision about his continued role. And I'm wondering if we can table this until Councillor Buckingham is back so we can have his personal thoughts on it, because if he doesn't see a commitment to continue on this based on his experience, I don't feel it's my place to vote for him to continue, and we need to go with a different strategy.
I'm just going to stop for a moment, ask the city clerk for a little advice here from the legislative perspective. Can it be tabled?
Absolutely, probably a better motion to postpone it to a certain time and date, the next meeting, and then it doesn't have to be lifted from the table. It's probably a more appropriate motion, but certainly council could table it. It would just need a motion to bring it back from the table.
Yep.
Do you not think Councillor Buckingham was vocal in his opinions in the last meeting?
I think he was, but what if we vote for us to stay?
So,
And that's the other issue, is that I think, we're making a decision, and just because he said he doesn't want to go, the assumption is, or his opinion, that we're going to vote to support that motion. If we don't, and what if we probe him a little more and have a deeper discussion? The possibility exists. But I've looked at the website, I've looked at the list, I've read the stuff, and I agree there's all this upside, and if I equate the $6,000 along with an ad or two that we buy, the amount of money is not a heck of a lot of money for the exposure you buy.
Councilor Baker, did you have a comment?
Your worship, just to clarify something on the bypass. First of all, it's not in the city. It's in other municipalities. It doesn't belong to the city. Highways looked at that, and the Chamber of Commerce and many lobbied for that bypass for many, many, many years. Just like certain people lobbied for the one-way coupling for many, many, many years. If you had a vote today on both of them, what would the vote be? 50-50, 70-30, and which way? People change from time to time. But right now, the land for the bypass is supposed to be gazetted. When that was approved, it was going to start within 10 years. And that was about 15 years ago. I stand to be corrected on that. The bypass was going to be built. According to the highways guys that I read here, there hasn't been a trade. I even wonder if it's gazetted on both sides of the provinces, in both provinces. Because there's 40 kilometers of road to build, a 4-lane highway. And I understand what Councilor Stephanie's saying. There are people that don't want a bypass. There are people that don't want the one-way coupling. There's people on both sides of the story. Sometimes you have to have a plebiscite to sort that stuff out, or else you stick your hand up and you take the bullet with whatever comes with it. But right now we're talking about the big picture. We're not talking about, because we're not building an underpass for Winston. I'm talking about from Prince Rupert to Winnipeg, or where does it end? Winnipeg. Not the Thunder Bay, pardon me. Or Portage, yeah, okay. That's what I'm really talking about. It's not about not one little project, one project in our town, or one in their town, or it's developing and continuing to promote the Yellowhead. And I'm sure there's others in this room that know more than I do, because I haven't had a briefing on the Yellowhead for some time, other than what you read in the magazine. Maybe what we need is some kind of a briefing, what's happening, what's going on, who's in and who's out, what are they building, what are they not building. I can tell you that Councillor McKay, or Alderman McKay of the day, he'd take a week's holiday and he'd drive right across with other people in his motorhome and look at that area and promote it and figure out with the communities what they needed. And he would actually promote with the government. But whatever, it's fine with me, but we've had our run at it, and whatever you want to do is what it is.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Strange.
I had a briefing with Mr. Buckingham as well when I returned, and that was one of his concerns, that he wasn't going to be here today, and that he was definitely set that he truly felt that this was an organization that wasn't going to be carrying on. So just to clarify that. Certainly I was a little disappointed when I saw the strat plan as well as their website. There's really no direction there. And I would tend to agree with some of the others here that, I think they need a reset. They've done a great job in the past and they've been very essential. But I think right now they're at a point where it's not looking very positive for their future with their current regime that they have there.
And just to second that, I think I have enough information from the strategic plan that was provided us through Councillor Buckingham and the information that I've looked at the website, that we have enough information to make a decision today. I think that Aaron is very vocal on his decision, and I'm not sure that there's anything, he's more invested than any of us, that's going to sway his decision. And we have, whether or not he's here or not, there's always going to be the possibility of the council member not being here, and to be able to make the decision with the information that we've been provided, which I think has been very thorough.
Councilor Strange.
Thank you, Worship. The only question I didn't ask him was that if there was an opportunity to renew and reinvigorate, would he be prepared to take on a leadership role? Because I don't disagree, everything he's shared has been critical and it's not, and so the question I want to know when hear him say is, you know what, if I was engaged and I spend X amount of time, and it says in option 1 that we may have to appoint a member of administration to serve as the director of the association, I don't know what that cost is to our organization, would he be willing to take and make that investment of his personal time and time he has committed? Don't.
And I can't answer that question, so we can attend Chief for his, on his behalf. Councilor Torson.
I'm prepared to make a motion here.
All right.
I move that council not approve membership in the Trans-Canada Yellowhead Association.
I'll second that.
Seconded, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call for a question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to 6.4, to the Chief Financial Officer, to the City Manager.
Brooke Fair, come up and present the 5-year capital plan for the South Federal Gas.
Good afternoon, Brooke.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So today we're asking that Council approve a 5-year capital plan, which was attached with the RFD, which encompasses the capital projects from 2018 to 2022 for the purpose of meeting the reporting requirements for the Saskatchewan Federal Gas Tax Agreement. As part of the Saskatchewan Federal Gas Tax Compliance Strategy, we are required to prepare and submit a 5-year capital plan, which has been approved by Council by March 31st each year. Administration has compiled a list of potential capital projects totaling $348,163,724 over the next 5 years. The 2018 capital projects listed were approved as part of the 2018 budget. The projects from 2019 to 2022 are based on recommendations from master plans and the need for additional infrastructure or to replace existing infrastructure. The project list, timelines, and costs will be refined each year as part of the budget process, and no project will commence until funding is in place and it has been approved with the annual capital budget. Some of the major projects included in the 5-year capital plan include the wastewater treatment plant, the North-South Corridor, the Colonial Park and Southridge storm improvements, the water line construction from the water treatment plant to the west end reservoir, and the northeast area structure development. Did anybody have any questions?
So, Brooke, I think you touched on that very well. There's a 5-year plan, but that's a moving 5-year plan. This is not a resident or a taxpayer looks at this and says, whoa, we're doing this in 2020. This is simply a projection after 2018. 2018 has been given budget approval at this point, but everything after 2018 is more of a wish list, I'd call it, the 5-year general plan, but until we have secured the funding, we're not going to move forward. Is that correct?
Yes, that's great.
Councilor Mitchell.
Yeah, thanks for this. The amount of work that went into that, I think, again, being able to project the cost and sequencing and priority all these projects, there's a ton of work in there, I guess. The one question I have is that, because if that's in spreadsheet, can we at some point see this in by category? And I'm not sure if I have seen it or not, but I'm just like, I was thinking if it's about roads, I want to see the whole 5-year plan for roads and 5 years for recreation and 5 years for those categories that we have in there.
Yes, that is something we'll be able to do in the future. Not all of these projects have been inputted to Questica, but that's where we would have that information and be able to work towards it.
So I think this would be the direction we've talked about, that 5-year planning and capital perspective for council to look at, have those discussions with administration, talk about priorities. Any other questions for Brooke?
Sure. I think it's a great job that was done there. My only other comment would be, though, that we have no wiggle room. It's brought to us, and it's got to be decided today, or else we're not going to be compliant with Saskatchewan tax. So it would just be nice to be a little bit ahead of it in case there was an issue. But great job. Looks excellent.
Yes, we will give you one other next time.
Short staff, that's it.
Thank you, Councilor Torres.
Yeah, lots of work.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just had a question on the capital management plan. I know as part of our budget, this is somewhat related to this topic, but as part of our budget, we're looking to tie all of our master plans together to prioritize everything. In the future, is that going to produce this type of document, or is it, because this is still quite a bit more of a moving target than I think that would be. That would be a little more set in stone when we get a capital asset management plan, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Perfect.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah, this is a little small chunk change for a year. It's all good.
That move that council approve the 5-year capital plan 2018-2022 for the purpose of meeting and reporting progress of Saskatchewan Federal Gas Tax Fund agreement.
Seconded, Councilor Craig. Any further questions for Brooke? Thank you, Brooke. I'll look for council's direction. I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to 625, Community Development Services. With the city manager, on to the executive manager, Don.
Thank you, Worship and Council. I have a couple items before you today. First being the 2018 Materials Testing and Geotechnical Services Standing Offer Extension. Recommendation is that Council approve the extension of a standing offer agreement with Solid Earth Geotechnical Incorporated of Lloydminster, Alberta, with a maximum upset limit of $841,000, and that mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents. Engineering Services issued a public request for proposal RFP for geotechnical services in January 2017. A standing offer agreement was awarded to Solid Earth at that time, and was approved in council on February 27, 2017, motion number 64-2017, for a term of 1 year with an option to extend 2 more years beyond that. Each year, the costs of services may be renegotiated and upset limit adjustment to the account for foreseeable capital construction. Administration has reviewed the current agreement and has set our capital projects for 2017. The total amount of capital work in 2017 on page 2 is $17,307,500, and our estimated geotechnical cost for those capital projects is the upset limit of $841,000. Options that council approved the extension of standing offer agreement with Solid Earth Incorporated of Lloydminster, Alberta, has a standing offer agreement with a maximum offset of $841,000, and that mayor and clerk be authorized to sign and seal necessary documents, or that council delay the extension of 2018 geotechnical testing standing offers Solid Earth and direct administration to gather more information or to put it out for another request for proposal. In previous years, the value of material testing and geotechnical engineering services have ranged approximately $180,000 to $300,000, depending on the volume of construction and progress of the construction, which is variable, may drive costs up for construction. In 2017, based on a budget of $7.5 million for engineering capital projects, which require geotechnical services, the standing offer agreement for Solid Earth had a maximum upset of $400,000. Solid Earth estimated revised units for the services to be provided in 2018. Administration has reviewed the new 2018 unit rates and has realized an overall increase of approximately 3% from 2017. Administration is comfortable with the increase and considers the change in rates to be reasonable. I'll pass it back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Executive Manager Don. Just want to make sure I understood. You're talking 2017 construction projects, and I believe you meant 2018 construction projects?
Sorry, when I talked about the $17 million worth of capital, yes, that was 2018.
Thank you. Start with Council Thorson, then Council Baker.
I have a question as far as what the actual was last for 2017. Did we get that out there? I may have been doing a quick calculation when you said it.
Thank you, Council. Last year we spent just under $350,000, $342,000 and change to be exact. That was based on $9.5 million worth of capital work. Comes out to be about 3.7% of the actual capital construction costs. We estimated the 400,000 estimation was based on 4.2% of the actual. If you compare that to this year with $17,307,000 on the capital works program, we're looking at about 4.8 of that is budgeted for geotechnical work.
Councilor.
So I totally understand continuing on with the same contractors, and they did good in our original standing offer agreement, so why would you change? My only question is, as far as renegotiating, I'm very surprised that we accepted a 3% increase when they are getting double the volume this year. So literally 841,000 versus the upset limit last year of 400,000, or the actual was 350. I can't understand why we wouldn't say, no, you guys are getting double the amount of work for us. You're going to employ 4 or 5 more people to do this season. We'll do it for a 0% increase. That's just my, the way I look at the world. And it's not that much money, but at the same time, I would have even considered renegotiating based solely on volume, because most companies, when they, there's a required profit percentage, but when you increase volume, you get some level of economies of scale, and you get a better deal because you're selling significantly more volume. And I think that this would have fallen into that as well. So even at the very least, I don't see how we accepted an increase on rates. Thank you.
That's right.
Yeah, sure, again, Your Worship. When you look at the increase, it wasn't a 3% increase across the board. When we did the request for proposal, it was stipulated down to the types of testing required. So when you look through the amended price list, there's over half of them have a 0% increase. So the cost for those services didn't change, and in fact some were reduced in cost. But there were some testing requirements, for example, asphalt testing that went up in price, and based on the volume, it represented a 3% increase on the template that we had created. So when they negotiated with the geotechnical firm, there was some recommendation from the firm that those costs were accounting for their cost recovery, and they asked for an increase to that. Like I said, administration had reviewed that and viewed those as reasonable.
Okay. So I just want to be sure with what you're saying is, when you're saying the 3% increase, that is a weighted 3% increase based on the actual activities they did last year. Because I am aware that it's possible to increase rates you don't use as much, or leave rates that you don't use as much, or services you don't use as much, while increasing the ones that you use more frequently. So if you just looked at a rate sheet, it would be, well, on average it only increased 3%, but if you change the services that are used more frequently by a greater amount, that has a more significant effect. So is that what we're talking, is you had weighted changes based on the services actually received?
Just to be clear, the funding analysis that was done through the RFP was set up with an average number of specific services required. So in the example, there's 800 hours of concrete testing. There's 24 estimated proctors to be done. So there was a spreadsheet that was developed through the original RFP where the 3% increase comes from was when you plug in the 2017 rates compared to the 2018 rates based on those volumes that were calculated in the original RFP. The overall price increase based on the same number of those tests is a 3% across.
Okay.
So I hope that
I think you're saying that it's weighted somewhat towards the actual activities.
it is absolutely. Yeah. There's a cost. There's a cost or per hour rate based on every service function that they provide. Some went up, some say 0, and one went down in cost.
Okay. Thanks.
Councilor Baker, you had a question.
Thank you, Elizabeth. When I looked at this report, I didn't quite understand it because I don't have a copy of the original report. In any case, the number I didn't have was what the original bid was. And I missed it somewhere in there. But putting all that aside, we got an $840,000 estimated job. And we never tendered it out. And there's I can't speak today, but there's at least 2, if not 3, licensed geotechnical firms in our city. And well, I wonder what automatically gives you 3% increase. Our sewer and water prices and asphalt prices have been going down the last couple of years, if I understand it correctly. And why would we give them an increase? I'm surprised that an extension to a contract this big wasn't tendered. I think that's big dollars. It's $841,000 contract. Now, I understand it's hourly work, a 3% increase, and an $841,000 and no tender, and that bothers me. And some might say, well, you know, we've had trouble with some of the engineering firms. Well, maybe haven't, but some of them have changed personnel too. And that's something for administration to check out themselves, but or for the city. But I really think that contracts that big should have been considered to tender out.
Executive Manager Don answer that, and then if you answer Mayor Delatio. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. The city has 2 options to secure this work. We can either do it on an individual project basis, so we would RFP out geotechnical services for the drainage channel improvements. We would RFP out the geotechnical services for the 2018 street improvement program. We would do it on an individual basis, or we can do it as we did it in 2017 as a standing offer agreement. When the RFP went out, it wasn't based on a total contract value, but it did have a maximum upset value based on the amount of capital that was approved in that year. So the comparison for financial in that RFP was based on the template I was just describing to Councillor Thorson about average number of services for standard proctors, concrete tests, asphalt tests, hourly rates, those types of things were based on an estimated number from our engineering team, and they used that to compare the firm to firm to firm, so they were comparing apples to apples. So they plugged in their hourly rates and their total values for each individual test, and that was used for the comparison when Solid Earth Geotechnical was awarded the standing offer agreement back in 2017. Now we're just part of the contract allowed the city to extend for an additional 2 years. Administration has looked at that, and we feel it's advantageous to continue with the services provided by Solid Earth. We've asked them to review their rates. They have come back and asked for an increase in some and some not. It represents a 3% cost increase over the review of the rates that were, or the number of tests that were put into 2017's RFP, and we're asking to extend that contract for another year to continue working with Solid Earth to provide geotechnical services for the city as a whole, which includes all our capital work through the engineering department. So I don't know if I answered that. I kind of got on the ramble there, but I'm trying to, it wasn't an individual project, is what I'm trying to get across. It's a standing offer agreement, so we don't have to tender for each capital project like we do right now with our design and construction management.
Councilor Baker, give me an answer to answer your question that you're looking for.
Well, yes and no, but that's fine. I understand the explanation right now,
Councilor.
Well, if there's something I missed, I'd like the opportunity to.
well, it just seems like a lot of money just to extend a contract without a tender. I understand why you do these things for sure. You know, I'm not new to the industry, but it's just a lot of money. You know, and 10% off, that's $80,000. I mean, I don't know where the bids are, could be 10% higher too.
Yeah, like I said, with the options, we can either extend the service agreement, set an operator agreement with Solid Earth for another year based on our construction, or we can go back and do some more investigation. We could put it out for RFP, and we could be looking at a reduced rate overall. We could be looking at an increased rate overall. I'm not sure where that would come in.
Councilor Batchor.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I wrap my head around it, because I think the projected high-end maximum set limit was $400,000 based on $7.5 million worth of projects. If we do a percentage calculation on that, it's 5.3%. And then if I take 841 of the 17 million, it's 4.8%. And it was an increase from last year to this year. So obviously you didn't spend the 400,000 last year.
No.
And and if you didn't, I guess the next question is, that's the high end at 841. So potentially that number won't be, that's the high end of the limit that you're going to spend as well. So your best guess is that it could be as high as 3% more from last year, but it actually could be the same. Because the first calculation of 400,000 is 5.3% of that total. This calculation is 4.8% of the total.
Yeah, so actual numbers last year were, because there was some carryover work from 2016 to 2017. Total money, or total capital work was 9.423432. So 9,432,432.
Okay.
Which we spent 346,319 on geotechnical services. So that works out to be the 3.7% of actual capital work spent on geotechnical that I spoke to earlier.
Councilor Sorensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I understand that the 841 is kind of an unrealistically, well, not unrealistically high, but it's very much a ceiling as to what the possible geotech costs would be. And I understand where Councilor Baker's coming from as far as the spirit of a standing offer agreement and whether the volume doubles, whether it's still in the same spirit. I think if you ask our teams as to whether or not they were satisfied with the services, and if they're satisfied with, you know, the product they were getting, and it's within the same percentages that we normally expect as far as the cost of capital, you know what? Everything points to this is probably fine to continue on with this firm. My only struggle is the fact that we are giving, or the fact that our capital budget is more than double, which means their potential fees are more than double, which means that I just can't accept a 3% increase. They should be getting a 0% increase. You know, if we were to go back and they were to go and sharpen their pencils and we went back to an RFP, I am very, very confident that other firms where they would come back with without an increase, because you're willing to take a lower profit percentage when you get volume coming in. It's just the nature of the business. You don't always, you can't always maximize. I just can't, I can't stress enough that I don't think we should accept a 3% increase. And if we say no to that, do we have to go back to tender?
That would be my recommendation. Yeah.
So what are the implications for projects and where we're at?
That's a very good question.
It would take some time to put an RFP together, but that's something we could do very quickly. Just to speak to the scope, the original standing offer agreement, I don't see it as a scope increase. The RFP was to provide geotechnical services. Now, the number of services has changed, I acknowledge that. But the scope of work was to provide the city with geotechnical services in a context of X, Y, and Z. The number of those tests will fluctuate throughout the year, and it will fluctuate through each individual project based on the complexity of the work, how many tests are required, how much work is done per day, blah, blah, blah. When we look at the price, the engineering team has looked at a percentage for each capital project, and that's what they based the maximum upset on, is an actual estimate based on percentage of the capital work. So that's where the 841 comes to. So it's not increasing a contract from 400,000 to 841,000. It's just the amount of work we're doing this year is double what we did last year. And I fully understand what you're saying, or you're talking about the 3% increase. We can definitely go back to the table and review that. I had the same questions through this process, and I was provided information that the engineering team had reviewed that they had had those conversations with the geotechnical firm, that they felt they were reasonable. In my opinion, if we've already gone through that process, if council isn't supportive of the 3% increase that this firm is requesting, my recommendation would be that we go back through the RFP process and that we give that full authority to all proponents.
Councilor Forrest.
My only big issue is that the 3% calculates to $25,000 going back through the RFP process for this and potentially pushing back construction schedules for the year is not worth it. That's why if we could just push back on it, I think we should, but if we can't, and we've had those conversations, that changes the tune.
Councilor
Yours, just to straighten this out, our construction season's already started. They must be working on their projects already.
We
It's
haven't-
like seeing the dirt flying anyway.
We haven't started our 2018 capital work. We've started the process of design and engineering and getting ready to tender those projects, but we haven't started. There's been some water main breaks and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I was just wondering if
Yeah, that's,
somewhere over here there's part of it. Is that part of it?
no,
Okay.
I'd have to verify with our operations team.
Oh, that's
doing
okay.
The water sewer replacement. don't
I just
know if
thought
they
maybe
do
we were into it already.
This is purely our capital and land division
Okay.
geotechnical requirements.
I appreciate your comments, Councilor Torres, but my concern is, and I think that anytime we delay construction or have the potential to delay construction, it doesn't make anyone any happier in this city, because I think we all heard very clearly in the last year and a bit that we don't like to see construction done in October if we can avoid it. It's like playing the game of roulette of taxpayers' money. The sooner we can get to work, we've got everything in place for contracts and tenders. To complicate it more, again, I'm concerned with the slight increase, but at the same time, I'm also leery to hold back construction any possible way that we can send the wrong message to the construction industry and moving things forward from the engineering team onto the deliverables. I think it's very important. So I'm willing to let this one go, and it's the numbers, because the project number volume has increased dramatically. We certainly have a much more aggressive capital budget this year to deal with the capital infrastructure that we heard about, because we know there's $347 million moving forward from our city in the next 5 years. We've got to continue to tackle the streets. We've got to continue to tackle the water mains, and at least not the other items that have to be built in the city. So, Councilor Batchelor.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's important to, a couple of things that are important for me is that the typical percentage that we would use in calculating projects haven't been exceeded. It doesn't really speak to, though, the potential for saving dollars, which is the other element here, I think, which is relevant to us. I think that I agree we should move on this, but what I would recommend is that as you look at this, I wouldn't mind us hearing a report back in the end of September, October, to see, in fact, where we're at on these numbers, and just to say, so what have we learned from this, and if we save dollars and we're fine because we have in prior years, then great. But I think the other part of it is that certainly when you look at the scope and size of these projects, consideration should be given around how we deal with the potential tender. But I think we're a little too far down the road on this one, figuratively and literally.
I'll look to council for direction on 6.5.1. Councilor.
Council approve the extension of the standing offer agreement with Solid Earth Geotechnical Inc. of Lloydminster, Alberta, with a maximum of $741,000, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents.
Second. Councilor Bagman. Any further discussion or comments? Not seeing any, I'm going to call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councilor Person, I believe you want to step out for a minute.
How did you know?
the city manager to executive manager Don.
Thank you, Your Worship. Second item before you is the East Drainage Channel Rehabilitation Project. Recommendation is that council approve the proposal from Tetra Tech Canada Incorporated to perform engineering, design, and construction management services to complete the East Drainage Channel Rehabilitation Project for a sum of $84,722, excluding GST, and that Mayor, City Clerk, be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents. The issue before us is the city, through its engineering department, has issued a request for proposal to acquire the services of an experienced engineering consultant to assist with the design and construction management for this project. Information regarding the East Drainage Channel Rehabilitation Project was presented to Lloydminster's Governance and Priorities Committee, GBC, on February 20th, 2018. The East Drainage Channel is located east of 40th Avenue and conveys a large portion of the city storm runoff to Neely Lake West. In the fall of 2011, due to extensive erosion in the portion of the channel just east of the wastewater treatment plant, north of 62nd Street, accumulating concrete block, ACE mats were installed in an effort to strengthen the channel and prevent future erosion. The city experienced a degradation of the channel due to possible slope migration, excessive velocity as it stretched, etc., resulting in subsequent erosion. In June 2017, the city used riprap to attempt to temporarily stop the further structure degrading until permanent solution can be designed and construction. A request for proposal was issued on January 19, 2017, asking engineering, it's probably a typo, I would assume that's January 19, 2018, asking engineering consultants to submit proposals detailing how they would design and manage the construction of the project. A total of 10 engineering consultants demonstrated an interest in the city's RFP submitting proposals. Through the analysis of each proposal was conducted to ensure the proponent with the best understanding of the requirements applied in the RFP was selected. Each proposal was evaluated by the evaluation committee in accordance with the evaluation criteria and weighing as outlined in the RFP. Summary of the results are shown in the RFP, and based on the evaluation of the proposals and as shown in the table on the RFP, Tetra Tech Canada Incorporated has the highest score and therefore considered to be most qualified to fulfill the commitments outlined in the RFP. The options before council is that council approve the proposal from Tetra Tech Canada Incorporated for engineering, design, and construction management services, or that council will direct administration to bring back further information. The budget implications: the approved capital budget for the East Storm Drainage Channel Rehabilitation Project is $1 million. The approved budget will be used for engineering service fees, geotechnical services, and construction. I pass it back to you, Your Worship, for any questions.
Thank you, Executive Manager. Council, have any questions or comments? One thing that I didn't see Executive Manager on, was there did the administration have a budget number that they had originally budgeted on engineering? Are we close to what that number was that was budgeted for this project?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd have to verify that number exactly, but history tells us, or tells me, that it's about 10% for this type of work.
So have we used them before? I imagine we would have included that in terms of our own kind of reference check and stuff. Have they done work in the city and we're comfortable with work?
I'd have to verify that. Based on the recommendation from the engineering team, I fully have confidence that they've done their due diligence, did the reviews, and are confident with the consultant they're proposing.
Number I looked at for council's information, but I just doing some quick numbers. 5 of them are within basically 15%. 15% mark, so we're not, and the ones that are over aren't over. There's a couple way over, but 1 or 2 that are just in that 108,000, so no more. Council Baker.
Your Worship, is your slides, Andy, Don, just to show us again what you're doing. I know you brought it to a meeting a while ago. I'm just trying to, according to this, it's about $1 million project, right?
That's what's been budgeted. Council.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember what.
This is where the drainage ditch, I don't have it in front of me either. It's, they were concrete blocks, all connected by a form of a mat, and it's washed. And they're eroding below the matting, so the matting.
You gotta remember all these reports you
I know, and because it's one little dear to my heart, that's why I remember this a little bit. But
These technological guys can probably flip it up on the screen for us. If you don't have a, somebody should. Never mind. I don't know what
yeah. Yeah, we'd have to go back to the February.
I guess my question is based on, there's more to do there in this channel than this, right?
Well, the main erosion I think that they're addressing right now is the target of this $1 million that they're looking at. I'm sure there's additional work that's, but the addressing the erosion is the main thrust of this repair work that's
Are
being
you
done.
calling this part of the Neely Lake project?
No.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, this is,
Sorry.
this is simply the
Okay.
drainage ditch leading,
It's on the way to Neely Lake.
on the way to Neely Lake. We gotta get it to Neely before we can worry about managing it at Neely.
That's where a map helps.
Yeah.
I might be able to.
Sorry, Don.
That's right.
This is that picture where I had asked before previously if we've ever tried to fix it. So this is where the bats are, right?
I think it is, but we'll hopefully, Executive Manager Don can bring it up and he's got it. There we go, perfect.
So this is, here it is. So what you see on the front screen there is what was presented at GBC on February 20th. So the channel in particular is this portion. So 40th Ave is over here, the entrance to the landfill, wastewater treatment plant, our current lagoons. So prior to 2011, being over 90% of our stormwater flows up through this channel and into the Neely West Lake or the Neely complex. There was significant erosion happening in that area. So there's a great difference from the channel coming across the road or the culvert coming across the road till it hits the Neely Lake complex. So in 2011, there was a project that was completed where large mats, concrete blocks tied together by cable were installed in the system to protect the channel from further erosion. That product lasted a couple of years, and we started noticing that the banks and the concrete blocks were starting to separate and shift and erode. And as that erosion started, as you know, water, once it finds a spot, it eats away at it, and it's gone to a point where it's starting to deteriorate. So that's what the channel looked like after 2011. Once the construction was done, you can see the concrete blocks. They actually wrap up around and lock into the existing soil on either side. This was the finished product. What we're seeing now, this was in 2014, it's significantly worse than it is in that picture. Here in 2016, so you can see the grade differential between the culvert and the bottom of the channel here. And this is where the erosion is starting to happen again out the side. So as water flows through, it picks up velocity. There's some concrete blocks are starting to separate and get pulled away, and the water travels out and around and starts to deteriorate the bank. It's in our best interest that we go back and do whatever work we need to do in order to remediate this project. So part of that is bringing a consultant on to help us look at what is a feasible solution. Once we have that feasible solution calculated, we'll put that out for construction tender, and that tender will come back to council for consideration.
I guess, Your Worship, I remember the tile and stuff. If water can get underneath it, it's going to roll.
Absolutely.
So, I don't know what kind of program we're going to have, but, and pipes won't work because it'll freeze.
Yeah, there's a couple options from my experience, Councillor,
Yeah.
where I'll just throw some wild things out. Gabion maps, with Gabion cages where you would in essence and drive the water into the rocks and step it down as an example is one option. Going out with a concrete apron, then followed by Gabion cages where that water, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to slow the water down and take the energy out of the water, because that's what causes the water, the erosion factor. So if you can take the energy out of the water, that's, I believe, the engineers will look to do that with whatever methodology they propose. There's various formats, and as you can see, we've got an erosion factor that we're going to have to deal with and from that perspective. But that's where the engineering will come to, and that's what we're looking at today, is they'll come back to us with a proposal saying, based on their knowledge, based on the water flow, based on the velocity, cubes per second or meters per second, and that kind of thing, what they're going to need to do to break that energy to eliminate the erosion factor.
Well, that's telling me those maps, and that's why I wanted to look at it. And whoever did it really didn't know what to do.
They may have underestimated the flow.
Well, I don't know what it is, but how long? You say 2 years. I don't know what you spent, but man, oh man. That's
I
not
believe
much of a...
the capital cost back then was 4.2 for the entire project, which got it past the lagoons. Now that structure is still intact past the high velocity area, and I would agree with you. I think our consulting firm that we had hired at that time maybe underestimated the volume and velocity coming out of there. From an engineering perspective, city perspective, we put our faith and trust into that consulting firm to make sure that we were getting what we thought we were getting.
Here's my point, Your Worship. Maybe we're gonna spend a little extra money and make sure it's done right, because if that's a 2-year project, I don't know.
I think that's our intent. I shouldn't say anything. It is our intent to engage with Tetra Tech to come up with a permanent solution.
Erosion mats or something.
And
Whatever that looks like, we will bring that back to council for consideration when we put it out for.
I'm just curious more than anything. It just seems like a lot of money and you only get that much time out of it.
Absolutely.
And you look at all these engineering fees, you wonder.
Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. I'm afraid that.
What's good, thanks, Tom. Now I got refreshed.
Any other questions? I'll look to council for direction on 6.5.2. Scott,
The council approved the proposal, from Tetra Tech Canada Inc. to Corps of Engineering Design and Construction Management Service to complete the East Drainage Rehab Project for the sum of $84,722, excluding GST, and that the mayor and city clerk are authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents.
Seconder? Councilor Beckman? Any further discussion, comments before I call for the question? Not seeing any. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councilor Baker, would you mind? Thank you. See if we can bring Councilor Corson back in. Time for coffee. He takes time for coffee. Goodness gracious. It's all good. Thank you, Councilor. Next item on the agenda is 6.6, operations. I'll look at the city manager and
I'll ask Michelle from our operations team to come forward.
to. Good afternoon, Michelle.
Good afternoon, Your Worship. I'm here to provide or present policy number 134-01, the procurement and purchasing policy. It was brought to both January 22nd as well as March 19th Governance and Priorities Committee for discussion and recommendations. The revisions requested have been amended and are reflected in the attached draft.
Thank you. I think this is one of those that will likely will continue to massage over time, if that's the right word, and develop and improve, because certainly procurement plays a huge role in the city. And I think as the elected representatives around this table, taxpayers expect good value for their money, appreciate the advice and recommendations and the work that the administration has done to prepare this. I think that it's certainly, we're getting better. And are we perfect? By far not yet, but if we can continue to build on this document and refine it as we move forward, I think we're going to make great strides. Councilor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Although I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think it's a really great policy. I think it makes the purchasing policy back to what it's supposed to be. I know there's been some changes to it in the past few years that, in my opinion, we're going the wrong direction, because I'm not sure what problem they were trying to solve. But I think this one does a better job of actually delegating authority to management and to individual managers in a better way that is more cost effective from having to have everything to come to council when there's a lot of scenarios where an RFP is done either way and the decision can be made at the level of a department manager, director level, or whatever the case is. Other than that, all the changes I've seen so far are positive. I had one question with regards to contra items, because there are scenarios where, if we're talking about advertising, things like that, where someone is helping with events and things like that, are we still able to do that with this policy the way it is? Because to me, it kind of read as though any kind of contra type of, service for service or bartering type services where there's not actual dollars exchanged cannot exist. But there's scenarios with regards to some of our events we put on where there's, services provided in kind. I'm just wondering how does this policy address that, and is that something we may need to look at in the future?
If I may pass it on to the executive leadership to help.
City Manager.
Yeah, the intent of the contra was to, I guess, we had some situations where there was, facility passes in exchange for work done. And so those are the types of activities that we're trying to eliminate from our purchasing and procurement. If there's agreements and things like that that are fair market value and they're a good business decision for the city, I think we would consider those. But that's going to be a work in order. We have a number of situations that we're trying to work through right now, and so, but I think that was the intent, and most of them, I think we do have some situations, I believe, Dawn, that there is some contra advertising. It's just making sure it's done in the right form.
Okay. Yeah, I suppose that's, we possibly could deal with some of these things within an advertising type policy anyway, and then make reference from this one once we've got all that in order. But I just wanted to bring that possibility up. This policy, although very, very good, huge improvement, still might need a few more tweaks in that area.
Yeah, I think that this is one of those that on an annual basis maybe we take a look at, just to make sure that as examples or real life scenarios play out, certainly when the administration is looking for guidance and it's not clear, it's the opportunity that council can help set that direction and go from there. Councilor Patrick.
Just what's the difference between a request for quotations and a request for proposals?
So a request for quotations is where we know exactly what we want. We know how many we need. We don't need any advice or any instruction from the proponent. A request for proposal is we kind of have an idea what we want, but we don't really necessarily know how to achieve it. So we're looking for recommendations about methodology and more detailed, helping us decide what it is we're looking for.
Okay, thank you. Because we spent time talking about details around criteria, like a matrix and that for requests for proposals, and I see there's mention of cost, and then the other variable is, I guess, whatever's in there for minimum 45%, I think, for cost, and up to a max of 60% in the other. So I was wondering where that fits, I guess, because we have quotations and proposals are.
Right, yeah, so that goes more for when we're just looking at price-based
Yeah.
and,
So RFP content would not be included in this document?
in the procurement policy?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
it pertains to all our FX documents, so anything where we would construct a solicitation document and actually reward a contract off of it.
I guess, Your Worship, I know that it's sort of like kicking a dead horse and beating a dead dog, whatever, but we spent a lot of time talking about those criteria and fleshing them out, and I know I met with Director Don, he gave a whole bunch of information and background of stuff that we haven't had an opportunity to see, I think, which would be beneficial to us at some point, to be able to see the actual details that goes in the back end of it, so. And I'm comfortable with what I've seen, and I guess there's still that piece of evolving on it, and where it fits in this document would be another question, I guess, in terms of how we reference it. But I just think it's very well developed along the way, and I think there's a way to tweak it, and even separating out technical requirements from financial pieces. And so if you don't meet the technical, then we don't want to consider you for the financial. We're concerned in the first instance that you pass that first layer of test before we go to the second and that kind of stuff. There's a lot of stuff in there that, so down the road, I guess, at some point, I'd like us to work on that piece of it.
Thank you, Manager.
Yeah, we had a good discussion the other day, and that's something we're already starting the motion on. Like I showed you, or we discussed, there's a lot of stuff we already do that is in the background that council doesn't see. We'll provide a copy of the template for our RFP process in our Friday report to council, and we're looking at improving our evaluation committee teams. We're looking at improving our consideration for who gets to move to that financial review. How we do that, there's still a lot of questions and road we need to walk down and figure out, but we are in the process of making some improvements.
I guess after seeing it, I just have more confidence in the decisions that are, and how it's being done. And I think from a council's perspective, it would be good to see that there is this depth of thought and process behind those items down the road.
Yeah, we've made those first steps and we've moved forward. We still have some finishing steps to get to the finish line, and I think that would be work in progress. Administration and sharing out with council and please make that go from there. Any other comments or questions for Michelle? Thank you for bearing with us, Michelle. This is three times the cat, and we got it now, and I think we'll likely see you back here in a year when we've got some questions, but no other questions. Thank you very much. I'll look to council for direction. 161, Councilor Corson.
I move that council approve policy number 134-01, procurement and purchasing policy.
Seconder, Councilor Baker. Any further questions or comments? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Unanimously. All right, moving back to the agenda, 6.7, Chief of Staff. Is there anything that's on the agenda? Okay. Moving to number 7, I'll look to the city manager, to the city clerk, correspondence and information.
We did receive a correspondence in relation to the traffic bylaw that will include with documentation when we're bringing it forward to council.
Excellent, thank you very much. Moving on to item number 8, is the mayor and council report. The task report for the last month for council and the residents' information. And again, it was a fairly busy month. We talked a little bit about this, but the Winter Games was hosted in North Battleford, so I had the opportunity to attend the opening and closing ceremonies and receive the Saskatchewan Games flag, which will fly over our city in the summer of 2020. With the upcoming city hosting these Saskatchewan Summer Games. Certainly there's was an opportunity to meet with the Provincial Department of Health and representatives at the hospital, and had an excellent tour with Councillor Diachuk and members of the Saskatchewan Health Authority. So the Prairie North Regional Health Authority does no longer exist. It's known as the Saskatchewan Health Authority, one organization, multiple layers, but certainly some cases, some changes of face. David Fad is no longer, has retired, so we have Vice President is based in PA, and serves northern Saskatchewan, is where we're associated with. The Vice President attended, the Chief Operating Officer attended, out of Regina, as well as some additional staff from Regina. We had an excellent tour and raised some very good questions and concerns with them, and that will be an ongoing file on the mayor's desk. I can tell you that as we move forward to continue to work with our MLAs on both governments and working with now the Saskatchewan Health Authority and Alberta Health Services, get my two terminologies corrected. So, from that perspective. From that point, we've covered off a lot of ground the rest of the month, but last week I had the opportunity to attend the swearing in of the new Lieutenant Governor for Saskatchewan, and I also had the opportunity to meet with several cabinet ministers while I was in Regina, thanks to our MLA Colleen Young. We discussed the water and wastewater treatment plant with the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, the Minister of Environment, and licensing matters around that facility. I did have an opportunity to chat informally with the Minister of Energy for the province of Saskatchewan. I understand she will be attending the oil show in September of 2018 here in our city. And lastly, I met with the Minister of Policing regarding the RCMP funding in our bi-provincial city. I wish I could report I came away from Regina with money, but I didn't as usual. But they certainly did hear from us, and we'll be discussing future opportunities. The Minister of Policing was very genuine. She's a former city police officer in the city of Regina and totally understands the efforts that we're making. The problem is, it's like everything else, their budget is extremely tight, I understand, and the purse strings are being held very tight. So we'll stay tuned for further details, but that's a recap of just some of the things Councilor Baker did allude to. We had the opportunity to attend the Eastern Alberta Trade Corridor Conference Forum in Vermilion, which was very enlightening on a whole bunch of topics, including transportation on the north-south corridor, and how the corridors basically take us from Fort McMurray right clear to Mexico City and further south, and how the trade routes, three countries run north-south. We talked about the East, West, Canada, Trans-Canada, the Yellowhead, but certainly it was good discussion and enlightened us a great deal about the trade that travels north-south. And agriculture plays a huge amount of stake in that, because a lot of our livestock that are raised here or provided as breeding stock end up getting trucked south, sometimes for consumption there, other times for processing, and yeah, it's quite interesting. So it was a very informative conference from that perspective. I'll go along, Councilor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a quick one, just because it'll be a little while before we're back here again, and I was just going to say that I am helping out with a community volunteer income tax program this tax season. And for walk-ins, there is the date of April 7th at Lakeland College, April 21st at Synergy Center, April 28th at Synergy Center, all 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. for anyone who is a senior, a newcomer to Canada, or has a modest income. Have your taxes prepared by some Lakeland students, looked over by some accounting professionals, and if you know anyone who fits into those categories, send them down. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor.
Yes, Your Worship, I attended a workshop in Saskatoon Thursday and Friday this week. It was co-sponsored by the Saskatchewan Health Authority and the Office of the Treaty Commissioner, and it's called Culturally Responsive Evaluation and Reconciliation. The conference really was set up to look at what are the metrics we're going to use around reconciliation, how do we know we're getting it right, how do we know we're moving the needle, and what do we do around this pathway. So I've sent all of you some of the key documents and scan them in, you should have in your email boxes, and also to Dion so we can share them with the staff as he sees fit. Two speakers that provided two interesting viewpoints, Professor Willie Irvine, he had two significant points, and one of which involved me, unfortunately, but he made me come up and ask me to actually issue a racist slur on him, and so I wouldn't at first, and called him a low-down rotten scoundrel. They said, no man, you got to swear at me and issue a racist comment, which I did, and it felt like crap is the only word to use, pardon the language, but and then we spoke to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC Commission, and said all the time it's been spent in engaging with First Nations and Indigenous communities, and the reality is that if we look at them in terms of the many things that have occurred within them, the Commission really has been silent on what the non-Indigenous community needs to do in terms of making reparations and moving forward, making this whole TRC process even that much more important. He talked about how certainly the kind of opportunities we have as a city in our community and getting together with all of our stakeholders creates this safe space, which he talks about, where we can talk about the issues, we can talk about the experiences and what we need to do individually and collectively in order to sort of begin to address many of the concerns that have been raised in the commission. So this notion of safe spaces and dialogues was his big piece. The other fellow was Malcolm King. He's Dr. Malcolm King, and he works in healthcare. He's also First Nations, and he spoke of a different model, and it's, if you can imagine, he talks about looking at things with two eyes. One is a non-Aboriginal eye, and the other was an Aboriginal eye. You need to be able to see both sides of the equation. And he called it, he said it's like looking through binoculars. You need to have both eyes working, and when they get in focus, you have one image, and it's that creation of that one image in order to be able to see all the total picture clearly. And so it was interesting because we were using these kind of models throughout the whole day and talking about a lot of experiences that people had, what we need to do move forward. In that group, there were primarily members of health. There were some friendship members, but people from the University of Saskatchewan in the health area, population control, homeless, shelters, people, poverty prevention. And so it was an interesting day, and I was the only elected official at the meeting, and so I'm glad I went because it was a task to share that perspective, if you like, and some of the challenges that we have, but very valuable, and I think I'm looking to see how this piece goes forward in terms of how we move the deal forward in our own community, and certainly if any of you want to talk about the documents that I sent and their need for explanation, I'd be glad to share as much as I can about it. So it was a great opportunity. I think tomorrow we have another TRC meeting here at the Operations Center, 10 o'clock tomorrow, so we'll have, I'm not sure how many will be attending and whether our folks are organizing a lunch or not.
Actually, Councillor, it's here, and we have a lunch organized.
In this building?
It's in Meridian.
Oh, okay, I thought it was going to be in the Operations Center.
Okay, that's where we ended up.
Okay.
Conflict to schedule a conflict.
All right.
At the Operations Center. So thank you for that report. Thank you for attending. I had the opportunity. I was invited to my schedule. It just was not humanly possible to get there. So thank you for attending that, Councillor Diachuk, and representing our city and certainly speaking on behalf of residents and the community itself, for sure. Any other councillors have any other comments from the last month that they want to comment on? I know that as I look at my calendar going forward, our community will continue to be busy April and May, which is great. And I think everyone in the community is waiting very patiently for Mother Nature to get cooperative and move from season to season. But bear with us, and we'll get there. We'll get there. Looking at the agenda, item number 9, is any other matters for this council to discuss at this time? Not seeing any, I will look to Carlos from the media.
Thank you, Your Worship. Today, media have requested to speak with yourself, Mayor Alvarez, as well as Councillor Torreson and Councillor Diachuk.
I'll look to, thank you very much. I'll look to council for direction on a recess.
Move to go to recess.
Councillor Diachuk, second. Councillor Rowe, all in favor? Opposed, carried.